Hello, everyone, and welcome to part 4 of our read aloud of Bo Rush's Basketball Brother. When we left off at part 3, Leo got some really good news. His leg has healed. His plan to accelerate his recovery time by doubling up on his physical therapy exercises has paid off. Not only is he able to run, jump, play basketball again without pain, he feels like his legs are stronger than ever thanks to the exercises. He's jumping higher and just feels great. But obviously, most importantly, there's no pain there. Natalie met him at the basketball court, and then they were heading to her house to grab a drink. And she had actually invited him to perhaps join her rec league team, the Explorers. And so he's thinking, that could be kind of cool. He's never actually been on a team before. And then Natalie assured him, trust me, it's no big deal. We're the worst team in the league. And that was right where we left off, so let's pick up with Basketball Brother. The first thing I saw when we walked in the house was Mrs. Bottle. She was standing in the kitchen holding a cup of coffee. Oh, hello, Leo. Hi, Mrs. Bottle. It's always weird when you see a teacher outside of school, like at the grocery store or a gas station. Of course, the worst place to see one would be at a swimming pool. Just the thought of a teacher wearing a swimsuit is super creepy. How was basketball practice? I looked over at Natalie, but her head was already stuck in the refrigerator. It was good. I wanted to ask Mrs. Bottle what she was doing drinking coffee in Natalie's kitchen. Natalie pulled her head out of the refrigerator. Hey, Mom, where's that apple juice? Leo's thirsty. My mouth dropped open. Mrs. Bottle is Natalie's mom? Look behind the milk, dear. Natalie pulled a jug of apple juice and poured me a tall glass. Thanks. I took a tiny sip. I would have gulped it down, except the teacher was still there. Hey, where's Shakespeare, Mom? Natalie glanced out the back door. He's in the den. Your father's reading to him. Natalie reversed direction and jerked her head for me to follow. Come on, Leo. You can meet my new little brother. Natalie looked really excited, but I wasn't all that interested in seeing some little baby slobbering all over the place. It'll just take a second, Natalie pleaded. And Shakespeare's so cute. Shakespeare? I felt sorry for any baby having to go through life with a weird name like that. It's okay, Natalie. I kind of got to go. Don't you want to pet him? Huh? I was trying to figure out why anyone would want to pet a baby. His fur is so soft. Your baby brother has fur? I asked hesitantly, not wanting to offend the Bottles. Shakespeare's a dog, Leo. Natalie calls him her puppy brother. Well, I don't have any real brothers, Natalie complained. Meeting a dog was the last thing I wanted to do. I didn't know which was worse, having to talk to a teacher on a Saturday or having some strange dog jump all over me. Shakespeare's really quite an interesting dog, said Mrs. Bottle. He absolutely loves being read to. Well, that might be interesting to her, but it wasn't enough to change my mind. Oh, don't worry, Mrs. Bottle added with a smile. He doesn't bite. Neither does Mr. Bottle. I hesitated, not knowing how to get out of this. I reluctantly followed Natalie through the living room. Shakespeare was a stray. We just got him a couple of days ago. She stopped and opened the door to the den. Over Natalie's shoulder, I could see a room filled with shelves and shelves of books. Some man who was probably Mr. Bottle was sitting in a leather chair holding a magazine. A large black dog was lying on the floor by the man's feet. Isn't he adorable? Natalie gushed. The dog turned and looked up at us. My eyes bugged wide open. It was the same mean, barking dog that had chewed through the rope on the porch. Luckily, the dog didn't seem to recognize me. And Mrs. Bottle was right. That dog just laid there as happy as could be as Mr. Bottle read to him, even though I'm pretty sure he couldn't understand any of the words. That's when Natalie got the worst idea in the world. Shakespeare would be the perfect reading partner for you, Leo. I figured Natalie was probably getting a little tired of listening to me read those first grade books over and over. I knew how she felt because reading them to myself at home was getting real boring. But there's no way I'd ever agree to hang out with her dog. Mr. Bottle suddenly got up out of the chair. Hey, Nattles, can you give me a hand for a sec in the garage? Sure, Dad. Natalie sneezed. Mr. Bottle frowned. You coming down with a cold? No, I feel fine. Mr. Bottle turned to me and stuck out his hand. Hi, I'm Natalie's father. I'm Leo Looper. Shakespeare seems to be enjoying this article on the space station, Leo. You mind reading with him till I get back? Well, thanks, Leo. Mr. Bottle handed me the magazine, and he and Natalie just left. Just like that. I looked down at the dog. He looked like he was deciding which part of me he wanted to bite. Hi, Shakespeare. I smiled nervously at the dog. He made a low growling sound. I didn't know what to do. If I tried to run, I was sure he'd sink his teeth into my backside before I reached the door. I was trying my hardest not to act scared, but my heart was beating a mile a minute. I knew Shakespeare could hear it, thump, thump, thumping. The dog suddenly stood up and gave me a mean look, and his growling got louder. He circled toward me, getting ready to attack. I took a step back and tripped, falling backwards into the leather chair. Before the dog knew what was happening, I opened Mr. Bottle's magazine and pretended to read. So, the spaceship flew up, and it flew up some more, and then it landed at the space station, and a whole bunch of astronauts were there, and pretty soon all the astronauts decided to have a spacewalking contest. I didn't hear any growling, so I snuck a glance at the dog. He was lying back on the floor next to my feet. And the first astronaut did some amazing spacewalk tricks like flipping backwards and... Oh, hello, Leo. Mrs. Bottle was standing in the doorway. I just need to put away these papers. Don't let me interrupt your reading. That's okay. I wasn't really reading. Oh. I was just making up stuff that sounded like reading so the dog would be happy. I see. Mrs. Bottle sat on a stool across from me. I could tell she was going to start talking like a teacher. Natalie told me that you know almost all the letter sounds. She says all you need to do now is practice, practice, practice. Yeah, I know I didn't sound too excited about doing that. Don't you like to read, Leo? I didn't want to admit to my teacher that I don't, so I just shook my head. Well, I think you just haven't found the right book yet. The book that lights the spark inside of you. I nodded so she'd think I knew what in the world she was talking about. You know, Leo, when I was your age, I only wanted to read books about horses, so I read them all, and became a fairly good reader as a result. I don't really like animals all that much. Well, what do you like? I don't know. Basketball? Well, sure, but you don't have to read when you're playing basketball. Mrs. Bottle took a book off one of the shelves. Have you seen this book? She showed me the book. It had a picture of a basketball player on the cover. I know Natalie enjoyed reading it. I took the book and quickly looked it over. It didn't have any pictures, but at least it was pretty thin. I felt the dog stirring at my feet, then he growled again. I hurriedly flipped to the first page and started reading. I didn't even notice Mrs. Bottle get up, but as I finished the first sentence, I heard the den door close. I was reading real slow like always, but it must have been fast enough for that dog. He stretched out on the floor and didn't make any more growling sounds. And I didn't have to make up the words this time. I could figure out most of them. I finished the first page and kept reading so Shakespeare would leave me alone. Natalie poked her head in at some point. I was hoping she'd say we had other stuff to do, but she just sneezed and disappeared again. I don't know how long I sat there reading to the dog. It must have been a long time because I finished 3 whole chapters. The strange thing was, somewhere in the second or third chapter, I kind of forgot all about Shakespeare lying there. I was too busy thinking about the basketball players in the book. They had a big game coming up and their top scorer was too sick to play. Holding that book, I had a strange feeling. It was like something had come alive inside me. Like that spark Mrs. Bottle had been talking about. I actually couldn't wait to find out what was going to happen in the next chapter. Now that I wasn't so mad about moving to Paris, I figured maybe it was finally time to end my breakfast boycott at home. I knew me not eating breakfast really bothered Mom. I mean, that's why I did it in the first place. So I was kind of surprised Sunday morning when I sat down at the table and poured a big bowl of cornflakes. I was expecting Mom to look real happy, but she just acted like nothing was unusual. Looks like a nice day. You going over to the school to play basketball? I don't know if every mom is like that, acting all normal right when you expect them to make a big deal out of something. But I was glad my mom's like that. The whole not eating breakfast thing seemed kind of silly now. No, I actually have my first practice with the Explorers. The gym at the Paris Rec Center smelled great. Like a perfect combination of sweat, leather, and stinky socks. And the sound of about 10 basketballs all bouncing on the hardwood floor and echoing off the walls was just about the best sound I'd ever heard in my whole life. Since I'd never been on a real basketball team, I wasn't sure what practice would be like. I figured the coach should draw up a bunch of plays on a whiteboard like they do on TV and the players would practice the plays. But it wasn't like that at all. For the first 15 minutes or so, the kids just goofed around, dribbling and shooting baskets. The Explorers coach, Mr. Foote, stood to the side talking to some other men. Every once in a while, they'd start laughing like they didn't even know we were there. Natalie and I were playing horse at one end. I noticed she and I were the only ones whose shots were going in the basket. I was starting to see why the Explorers were the worst team in the whole league. Finally, Mr. Foote whistled real loud and all the noise in the gym came to a stop. You probably noticed we've got a new player. Mr. Foote looked down at the clipboard he was holding and then up at me. Leo's going to give us some much-needed depth. I knew what Mr. Foote meant by that. He meant I'd sit on the bench with the other 4 subs and watch the 5 starters play. But that was fine with me. I honestly didn't expect to show up and immediately be in the starting lineup, even if the Explorers had lost their first 4 games by an average of 30 points. I'd have to earn playing time. But I was sure it wouldn't take too long, not when the coach saw the way I could bury a jump shot. Okay, Noah, Amari, Natalie, Carlos, Mariah, you're on offense. Mr. Foote tossed a ball to one of the boys. Natalie and the 4 other starters walked to one end of the court. Everyone else, defense. I followed the remaining 4 kids to the other end. I'll guard Mariah, the taller of the 2 girls in my group announced. All right, I'll guard Carlos, said one of the boys. You always get to guard Carlos, complained the other boy in my group. That's because we're friends. You take Natalie. No way, I'm not guarding her. I'll take Noah. Who should I guard? Asked the other girl. Take Amari. Let the new kid try to guard Natalie. The 2 boys laughed. I wasn't exactly sure why no one wanted to guard Natalie, but I found out about 10 seconds later. The offense trotted down the court toward us. As Natalie dribbled the ball across half court, I moved forward to guard her. But the next thing I knew, Natalie flew past me. I tried to spin after her, but my shoes got tangled up and I fell to the floor. All I could do was look up helplessly as she dribbled in for an easy layup. Hey, nice crossover, Natalie, shouted Mr. Foote. Natalie reached out her hand to help me up. You okay, Leo? I think she was worried about my knee, but the only thing hurting right then was my pride. Try it in the half court, the coach instructed. Natalie stood at the top of the circle and dribbled the ball. The rest of the offense took up positions on either side of the free throw lane. This time when Natalie came toward me, I was determined to block her path. She faked left, I dribbled right. I jumped out in her path, forcing her to flip the ball to Noah. Yeah, it felt good to stop her this time. But while I was busy feeling good, Natalie suddenly cut to the basket. Noah tossed the ball back to her. I raced to try to block her shot, but the ball was falling through the net by the time I even got there. I felt bad for letting my teammates down, but they didn't seem to mind that much. I guess they were just glad they didn't get stuck having to try to guard Natalie. Over and over, Natalie ran the offense as the point guard. Every time I figured out a way to stop her, she'd trick me and do something I wasn't planning on. It would have been a whole lot easier if I hadn't taught her how to dribble without looking at the ball. Fortunately, the offense didn't score on us every time, but not because me and the other subs stopped them. Natalie's teammates, Noah, Carlos, Mariah, and Amari, missed a lot of wide open shots and threw the ball out of bounds or kicked it when they dribbled. As a matter of fact, Natalie was the only one of the starters who could shoot a lick. I managed to block a couple of her shots, but she made it look pretty easy to score when I was guarding her. Even though Natalie was my friend, I didn't expect her to go easy on me. Just from watching her play on the school playground, I knew she was super competitive, so I didn't blame her for making me look foolish over and over. I thought Mr. Foote would switch things around after a while and let the subs play offense and the starters play defense, but he didn't. I spent the entire practice trying to figure out how to guard Natalie, but honestly, I couldn't stop her. That's when I realized what I'd been doing wrong all the years I'd played basketball. I'd only thought about offense, shooting and dribbling and passing the ball. I wasn't the only one. Most kids I'd ever hung around with never even bothered to play defense. As good as I might be on offense, this first practice with the Explorers had shown that I was clueless when it came to defense. And that's when I thought of a question that I couldn't answer. How would I ever crack the starting five if all Mr. Foot saw me do was play defense with the subs? And that's going to be an excellent stopping place for now as we wrap up this part of Basketball Brother. And I want to take a moment to step back in today's reading to that middle section when he was reading over at the Bottles home, where he really finally started to enjoy reading when he was reading that basketball book. And that's such a good lesson to learn. Whatever it is that you're into, there's a book out there for you. Whether it's about sports like Leo, horses like Mrs. Bottle, or animals, or video games, or space, or history, or anything you can think of. There are books out there for whatever your interests might be. So if you're not someone that typically enjoys reading, find a book that you love. Find something that really connects with you. And all of a sudden you'll realize that reading can be so much more enjoyable than you ever thought possible. I hope you join us back next time as we continue with Bo Rush's Basketball Brother. Bye.